Okay, welcome everyone to this next lesson in the policy management using the Calico user interface learning track. And in this video, we will look at identifying endpoints selected in a policy. Now, when you define a network policy, you scope the endpoints to which the policy should apply using a range of selectors. I'm not going to go through all the selectors in this video. We have a separate video capturing that. But once you have your selectors in place, it's useful to look at the endpoints that were scoped as part of that policy. Okay. So look at an example. I have a policy here called, okay, let me go back, quarantine. And if I click on that policy, and if I look at the left over here, which says endpoints, the endpoint count is 0. And that's because the selector that I've specified for the policy does not apply to any of the endpoints in this cluster. As a result, this policy right now is a dormant policy. It is not enforced in any of the endpoints. Okay. Now, if I go back and select another policy, this one is called Tenant 1 restrict. And in this policy, I've used a namespace selector to select a couple of namespaces, which in my cluster belongs to Tenant 1. Okay. Now, I could have used label selectors. I could have used service account selectors. I could have scoped this to a specific namespace, right? These are the capabilities that you can use to scope policies to a specific set of endpoints. Okay. And once you've defined your scope, if you look at the right over here, this policy applies to 19 endpoints in the cluster. Now I can click on these endpoints and look at the specific endpoints to which this policy applies. And as you can see, these endpoints belong to either the Hipster shop or the Yao Bank namespace. And the reason for that is I've used a namespace selector selecting the Hipster shop or the Yao Bank namespace for this policy. Okay. Similarly, if I'm to look at something a bit more specific, I have a workload isolation policy in this tier for several workloads, one of them being the front end workload. And as you can see, this policy applies to one endpoint. If I click on the endpoint, it is going to take me to the front end workload to which this policy applies. Okay. Now you can click on the workload. That's going to expand this menu and provide more information regarding the workload, such as the IP address of it, the interface attached to it, and all of the policies that currently apply to this workload. Okay. So very useful during troubleshooting scenarios. Sometimes you apply a policy and you find out that it is not enforced for the workload, in which case it is important to look at whether the workload was scoped as part of the policy, because there could be a mistake in your selectors preventing it from being applied to a workload. Okay. All right, that's it for this video. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.